Well, it's Christmas time. 'Tis the season of giving, and today I plan to give till it hurts. I've gotten loads of requests for Drake of the 99 Dragons, and for years I had a perfectly valid excuse not to cover this game. It was released on the original Xbox. I don't own an Xbox. Case closed. Until it wasn't. Drake of the 99 Dragons was developed in 6 months and released on the Xbox in November of 2003, and 7 months later it was ported to PCs, long after it had already gone down as one of the worst games in history and everyone had long since stopped caring. And then in March of 2018, some crazy bastard brought that PC release onto Steam to try and milk a few dollars out of the Biofascination crowd. And judging by the unironic positive reviews, the hipster I'm so desperate to feel unique and superior that I will myself to like shit crowd. So now that there's no good reason not to, this is Drake of the 99 Dragons. The game begins with the titular Drake alone in his room and narrating to himself.
Those who know my name whisper it in fear. Most people I meet, I only meet once. I am Drake, the assassin. To me, life is all about death.
Okay, so our introduction to Drake is him playing with 2 guns, giving us this gruff life is death Punisher wannabe narration, while having the dopiest slack-jawed derp face I think I've ever seen, and playing with empty guns like he just realized he forgot to load them. So the game has an optional tutorial to introduce the controls. Drake can double jump, you have 2 guns that are fired with the left and right mouse buttons, and each gun can be swapped out once you find sidearms. What's strange is that when a gun runs out of ammo, Drake doesn't reload it. I guess it was easier to animate him tossing the gun aside and somehow pulling an endless supply of new guns out of his ass. Anyway, you see a commercial for a company called Tang Industries, which makes cyborgs so people can live past death. Feels like I should add Judge Dredd to the list of things this game rips off, and then a Tang cyborg appears for Drake to train against. Jesus, thing takes a ton of hits to kill, and it hits like a truck, shit! Oh, what? I tried to jump! Look at that, I jumped and Drake just froze in midair, what the hell? Shit, the double jump just didn't flat out work! What gives? Shit! I can't get past the first freaking level! My first thought was to run away from the cyborg peppering it with fire, but Drake's arms constantly flail off to the sides every time you try to aim behind you, and if you fire while his arms are all jiggly, the bullets scatter off where his arms are pointing instead of firing where you're aiming. I tried circle strafing the bastard, but you see a blood splatter every time you land a hit on an enemy. My shots aren't landing hits. It's like any shot that isn't pinpoint precise in the center of his body mass just doesn't count. I studied the guy's movements and realized he kind of charges at you and then he sits still, so new plan, jump the charge and then land some hits, except the jumping controls blow ass! If Drake grazes anything in midair, he gets frozen in place and slowly drifts down until his stupid lockjawed face gets punted across the room, and you fight this cyborg in a really cramped space where jumping anywhere gets you hung up on shit and frozen. Either hung up on the walls, hung up on the large structure in the middle, your foot gets caught on the robot you're trying to leap over, or of course tripping on empty air. I've tried everything I can think of, and this rat bastard just won't die. I can't land hits for the shitty hit detection, and I can't dodge for the broken jumping physics. Again, the first level, and I can't beat it! Well, it turns out the cyborg fight is part of the tutorial and you can skip it, otherwise this review would be substantially shorter. The game proper begins with Drake stating that he could sense a life force inside the cyborg. So if you opted to skip the tutorial, then you don't get any introduction to the main character, and the game opens talking about a cyborg that never appears on screen. Anyway, another clan attacks Drake's hideout and kills everyone inside.
Intruders in the penthouse of the 99 Dragons clan? You must be out of this world to get past our guards.
I would like to remind people this game was developed and released in 2003, and nobody had any business describing things as out of this world. Also, for shit's sake, Drake, close your mouth! There was no attempt made at lip-syncing across the entire game. Drake just goes "durr" in every scene. A villain named Ghost Assassin steals an artifact the clan was guarding, and you have to chase him down to steal it back. Who is Ghost Assassin? What is this artifact? What does Drake's clan do? That's all explained in a tie-in comic that apparently exists. In-game, you get no context for what's going on. You have to chase down Ghost Assassin while rushed on a time limit. Every single room you get bombarded by multiple enemies with machine guns. They have near perfect accuracy and they kill you in seconds. I have tried everything to try and get past these enemies. I tried dodging fire and strafing enemies and it didn't work. The halls are too cramped, the enemies are too accurate, and I can't land enough hits to put anybody down. I tried using cover, but there's no way to shoot from around cover and enemies never have to reload. There's no way to time a counterattack. These enemies seem to be taking a boatload of fire to kill a piece. I tried switching weapons to kill the enemies faster, but the machine guns you can pick up scatter bullets to where you can't hit jack shit unless it's at point-blank range. I got desperate and tried running past enemies, but half the rooms have their exits guarded. Jumping around seemed to work for a little while, but that wasn't reliable either. You just move too slow and hang up on obstacles too easily, and enemies can still easily hit you. There's just no way to avoid getting pumped full of holes everywhere you go. There are no health pickups or checkpoints. Half the time I'm out half my health after the first room. Getting out in the open to kill enemies means being wide open so they can hit you back. It ends in a kill room of 4 guys who mow you down like RoboCop. I don't know how you're supposed to survive. I cannot for the life of me figure out how the fuck you play this horse shit! Breathe. Just breathe. Calm your mind and reflect on your failures.
How the hell do you play this game? I've tried everything and you can't survive the combat. It's impossible.
You must forget what you have learned about good game design, about logic, about strategy. You're stuck on how the game should be played. Pay thought to how it must be played. The game is too poorly made to reward intelligence. Perhaps it will reward idiocy.
Play like a stupid person. Sit. Thank you, Master.
Thank you for the cameo and for the new voice that's closer to my movie appearance. It's been years since I've been in these videos.
Yeah, the original voice I gave you was hard to sustain. It sounded like crap. Sorry about that.
So I beat the first level by suicide charging every enemy and just hoping they all died before I did. That's it. That's the secret. Well, that and exploiting a glitch where enemies can't shoot down at you. Yeah, this game is broken. The original Xbox version of Drake of the 99 Dragons handles all of its combat with a lock-on targeting system. You tag an enemy, Drake shoots them automatically, and enemies die in seconds. What makes the base game borderline unplayable is I've heard the lock-on barely works, the game doesn't properly explain how it works, and when it does work, it's controlled with the same stick that controls the camera, which makes it damn near impossible to control the combat or camera with any precision. The PC version jettisons the lock-on system for the typical look around and shoot with the mouse deal like other shooters, and the PC version is borderline unplayable anyway. The PC port flat out doesn't register the vast majority of hits that you land on an enemy. Across the entire game, I've only ever consistently landed hits by firing while standing still or firing while charging straight at my target. If I fire while strafing or while jumping, my bullets just inexplicably don't hit. We already know that Drake doesn't fire where you aim, he fires where his arms are pointing, and there are a lot of animation errors where the game will struggle to line up the arms with the cursor and shoot wildly off target. If you shoot while jumping, fire behind you, or fire while strafing, then good luck having the game actually shoot where you're aiming. It's also difficult to draw a bead on enemies while strafing because a lot of the combat takes place in tight confines at extremely close range, or at a distance where the enemies are tiny with picky hit detection. Couple that with sluggish, choppy camera control and terrible guns programmed to where only precise hits count, and it's hard to line up any shots while moving. Whatever the exact reason, the shooting is programmed so poorly that you can't dodge fire and shoot at the same time, which leads to the other big problem with both versions. Every enemy in the game can kill you in a few hits. If any baddie gets a clear shot, you have seconds at best before you die. And even if the guns worked, you're too slow to dodge any fire. The combat in both versions is crippled between broken shooting mechanics, broken enemies, and awful movement controls. You can barely fight any of the enemies. The only way to survive is to kill the enemies as quickly as possible so they land fewer shots on you, and for the PC version that means the only viable tactic is to suicide charge every enemy. Some levels are more open so you can pick off enemies at a distance and avoid some fire, but attacking head-on is still the only tactic that ever seems to work. Much like Rambo the video game, Drake of the 99 Dragons becomes a quarter of the way playable if you play it one really specific way. Never dodge enemy fire, charge enemies head-on to kill them quickly, never use the alternate guns unless you need the machine guns to spray at close range, make your way through levels slowly and methodically so enemies don't gang up on you as often, and always engage enemies at differing elevations if possible. Most enemies can't shoot down, and a lot of the enemies' brains melt if you're positioned above them. Behold the amazing AI stuck on a wall when there's a ramp 2 feet to his left. Brilliant! Maybe Tails reminding people that ramps can be used as ramps was a public service after all. Oh, and the mouse sensitivity resets to a rock-bottom default every time you boot the game out. Watch out for that too. But even once you hold to the disciplines of shitty game foo, the game is still a boatload of trial and error because it feels like every level has at least one death trap that massacres you no matter how carefully you're playing. Also, much like Rambo the video game, the game is built to be beaten in under 2 hours. It's just substantially longer than that because everything in the game is so busted. Anyway, Ghost Assassin gets away with the artifact and Drake goes back over the wreckage to find that he and the Master are already dead. Makes me wonder why the game was busting my balls to survive the first level if Drake has already ceased to be, but whatever. Apparently, Neo wannabe Drake has a tattoo of an undying dragon on his chest, exactly like Iron Fist, and this has somehow made him immortal and given him vague superpowers, exactly like the Crow. And he is tasked with harvesting other people's souls to power this undying dragon, just like Darts the big bad of Yu-Gi-Oh! Season 4. Okay, that one might be a coincidence. Now you can run on walls, but it only works if you get a running start at the wall, and it only works for 3 seconds at a time, and it's triggered automatically if you glance a wall, and you still awkwardly moon jump everywhere and can barely steer. I think it actually makes the controls worse. You can slow time, which freezes the game world and Drake, so you can't use the bullet time to actually do anything. The only useful power you get is now the enemies drop green souls that heal you, which makes the game much easier now that you don't die instantly wherever you go. Later on in the game, you gain powers called Motivate Soul, which causing healing souls to float towards you, and Detonate Soul, which makes an enemy soul explode to damage nearby enemies. What the game doesn't tell you is that neither of these abilities works unless you were holding the Motivate or Detonate button when you killed an enemy, so neither power actually does anything unless you were awkwardly holding yet another button mid-combat. Plus, detonating souls is a complete waste of time. The blast radius is too small to hit Jack.
The strength of the stolen souls is changing me. Have I become invincible?
Psyched that he can't die, Drake throws himself out of a window proclaiming that he's invincible and then he dies. Yep, Drake just straight up commits suicide. What did the dumbass think would happen there? Being immortal isn't gonna stop every bone in his body smashing to dust after a several-story drop like that. Dude is literally too stupid to live. Drake wakes up in some kind of spirit world where 4 talking statues call him a moron.
Obviously, the undying dragon does not protect him from his stupidity.
Really feels like there's a Disney film these talking statues are ripping off, but I can't pick one. They explain that Drake can still die, but these statues can bring him back and make new bodies for him. From this point on, every time you die, the game dumps you into this spirit world where you're forced to sit for 10 seconds while the statues make fun of you. And you have to sit through 2 loading screens every time you die before the level restarts. Who thought sitting through this bullshit every time you die was a good idea? Well, I'll count my blessings. I'm not being forced to stare at Drake's dead mom during these death scenes. You spend 2 levels chasing down the courier, taking the artifact to their boss Tang, because I guess the ghost assassin guy who can frickin' fly is just too lazy to do it himself. You chase him through some streets, through a fall down to street level where the game insta-kills you with fall damage if you don't make the jump just right, and at one point the courier froze and rendered the level unplayable until I died. You track the courier to a fireworks factory, which is absolutely loaded down with rooms where enemies ambush you from off-screen before you could possibly know they were there. You just die over and over until you've memorized where all the enemies are placed. At the end of the factory level, a room blows up out of nowhere and Drake dies again.
At least this time you had a colorful exit. We are amused.
The courier stops at a casino because they needed to pad the game's runtime. This stage ends with you getting jumped by 3 tigers simultaneously and getting helplessly mauled to death in seconds until you learn to enter this room with the machine guns to mow them down at close range. You also fight this guy who takes the metric shitload of firepower to put down and his bullets rip you to shreds. Even for this game standards, you can barely fight this guy without getting killed. I had to jump to some overhead catwalks and just try to use them as cover. The courier escapes to another anonymous gang's hideout, which includes a dance floor room where 5 or 6 enemies gun you down at once, and you have to awkwardly fight a lady who bum rushes you at point-blank range in the middle of it all. You see what I mean about most of the levels being loaded with death traps? You have no way of surviving this shit without multiple tedious trial and error tries at every level. At least every stage is short. Most of them clock in at 3 minutes or less. The courier lost the artifact, so you spend another 3 levels of padding, backtracking to the casino, and fighting a street gang that just materializes out of nowhere. You have a boss fight with the leader of the street gang, who you kill by running away until his chain weapon gets stuck in the ceiling so you can land some hits. It's only hard because the level starts with 6 or 7 goons mowing you down at once. Defeat Osu to pursue Serpent Eye and Pak at the House of the Dreaming Cloud. There are 4 names in that level description, and I know what exactly one of them means. Who the shitballs are Puck and Serpent Eye? Drake of the 99 Dragons was made to launch a cartoon and comic book franchise, but the game seems like it was written under the assumption that the cartoon was already in production and already a massive hit, like we're already supposed to know a shitload of backstory. I don't know anything about Drake other than he calls himself an assassin, and he's an idiot. We're supposed to care about saving the master, but I don't know a thing about him except one time he roofied Drake to give him a tattoo. I don't know what the artifact you chase after the entire game does. I don't know what the Clan of the 99 Dragons does. I don't know anything about these supervillains they keep casually bringing up. Who the hell are Pak, Ghost Assassin, Osu, or Serpent Eye? What are their powers? Why are they evil? What are their motivations? Do they have any background with Drake? Even by game's end, you don't know anything about Tang, the game's main villain. He wants to take over the world, and that's it. No motive, no backstory, just wants to take over the world. Even one simple element of the environment. People bring up Drake tossing out his guns leaves a ton of fingerprints for cops to track. There isn't a single hint that cops even exist in this world. And in a plot that's mostly padding, you'd think running from the cops would have made a few decent filler levels. There is exactly 0 world building to establish who any of the characters are, what any of the crap they're fighting over means, or to set up a world or stakes that you can get invested into. This is the first time anyone has heard of your stupid characters and stupid mythology. You have to stop and explain this shit, or nobody will have any idea what's going on. They explain nothing. Freaking nothing.
Serpent Eye should have had plenty of time to wreck the Dreaming Cloud. Things are heating up.
Yeah, it also doesn't help the plot that the music keeps drowning out the dialogue. Level 11 shamelessly recycles the casino map, only now there are 3 different rooms where you get jumped by tigers and massacred. At the end, you fight this anonymous guy who has completely unexplained lightning powers. I pumped him full of bullets, nothing happened. I tried reaching him thinking it would end the stage. He just insta-kills you and turns you into a cheap skeleton sticker from a children's coloring book. You want to know how you kill him? You shoot these innocuous pink squares on the ground that you had no way of even noticing were there. Do your own math, how you're supposed to figure that out! The casino blows up for some reason and Tang gets the artifact while Drake dies again.
Serpent's Eye fishermen have captured the albino orca and brought it to the fish factory at Dock 12.
And a ritual will be performed to charge the artifact with the energy of the whale's soul.
What in the literal hell does a whale ritual have to do with anything that's going on? Again, this is brought up casually like it's common knowledge. You storm Tang's hideout to stop some vague, convoluted ritual, only for Drake to get shot and he dies again. Has Drake actually accomplished anything in the story without fucking it up? He spends the entire first half of the game chasing down the artifact, failing at every turn, getting himself killed 5 times by his own stupidity, all the while bragging about how badass he is. It's common for superhero origin stories to have the hero fail until they undergo an arc or a personal discovery and get their shit together. This is nothing like that. Drake is a moron who just bumbles headlong into enemy fire at the start and end of the game. He wins more through attrition than any kind of development. The guy is a boring, useless tool! Well, now we've blown half the game on a filler quest that accomplished nothing. Drake is told to stop Tang's thugs from stealing the Master's body. Anybody else getting the sense that Drake dies every few levels so they can just dump him wherever the plot needs him to be at that moment? Level 13, you tediously jump across the slowest damn elevators in video game history and try not to die instantly from fall damage when you're tasked with falling down an elevator shaft. This level is packed with blind corners where enemies with powerful pistols jump you and kill you instantly. I swear there's no way past this double blind corner unless you realize there's an otherwise useless grenade launcher earlier in the level whose projectiles bounce off walls. The game doesn't tell you what you pick up when you grab weapons. This whole level is just extensive trial and error. Drake breaks into another Tang building full of so many quick kill pistol douchebags that you're honestly better off just running through most of the rooms. This level has 3 rooms where enemies in jetpacks fly around bombarding you with missiles. You're supposed to use the slow motion to shoot them down since aiming and firing is the only thing the slow motion doesn't impede. And this is where I came to a baffling realization. You see, in the original Xbox game, the slow motion power is pretty much useless because it freezes you in place with the enemies, but in the PC version, slowing time lets you get a ton of shots off at a stationary enemy without having to worry about Drake's arm animations wrecking your shots. The slow motion is one of the precious few ways to reliably fight the enemies because it throws the game down in a chokehold and forces it to register your hits. So how about that? One of the game's most broken mechanics is actually useful in the PC version, as a remedy to how broken the rest of the PC version is. Granted, no sooner had I made this realization than the slow motion caused a fan to glitch and rocket me into the ceiling where I couldn't get down, and the slow motion regularly mutes the game's sound. The entire mechanic is glitched to high heaven. Speaking of glitches, the game failed to start up properly and crashed in cutscenes 3 separate times, and if you play the game in full screen, the graphics will almost constantly glitch and tint the screen a dark blue, green, or red. So yeah, the PC version was rushed out too. Drake fails to stop the bad guys from stealing the Master's body. I know you're just shocked at this. And they put his decapitated head into a cyborg body. This boss actually gave me some trouble because he fires off a constant salvo of missiles. It's not hard to avoid the missiles. It's hard to get a straight shot at the boss so you can fire bullets that the game will register.
Master, I'll take you to the Serene Garden.
Shazam! Now the Master's head is somehow reattached to his body! Drake somehow brings the Master's body into the spirit world, but the Master's spirit isn't in his body. But why is the body but not the spirit in the spirit world? And we later find out Tang makes his cyborgs by putting people's souls in them. So why is the Master's spirit missing, and doesn't Drake have to die to get sent here? They did not think through this mythology at all, did they? Drake sneaks into Tang's main office. You have an actually halfway decent obstacle course dodging lasers and mines, and watching as enemies walk out into a subway tunnel and get run over by trains. Brilliant! Although this level ends with a jump I'm pretty sure is impossible to make since the wall run doesn't go that far, pretty much forcing you to fall into this pit of mines and hope you have enough health to survive. The next level has more awkward jumps and ends with you getting jumped by 5 fast melee enemies who each take a shitload of balls to kill and who all dogpile you at once. Go to all of the hells! Tang's plan is to use that anonymous artifact we've been chasing all game to open a portal to the spirit world, because I guess the artifact does that, where some spirit lords that I guess exist now will reap the souls of the living and give Tang a ton of souls for a cyborg army to take over the world. Level 18 out of 25, we finally get an explanation of the plot. How can a story be so simple and so convoluted at the same time? Drake figures that Tang would have needed to kill a massive number of people to open the portal, and he goes to the morgue to see if that's where he's stashing the bodies. Gee, investigating a mass murder and a morgue level with human bodies impaled on hooks, I'm so shocked that this wasn't turned into a children's cartoon. To get to the morgue, you have to jump over a few buildings and regularly leap into tight rooms and get jumped by dudes that you can barely fight at point-blank range and with nowhere to run. So here's what you do. You run past the enemies to make them all spawn, and then you jump to the ground to kill them since they can't shoot down. That's how this game works. Counter abysmal design by abusing other abysmal design. The morgue level isn't that hard, you're used to clearing enemy ambushes at this point, but this is the only level where the game's stupid, arbitrary 10-minute time limit per level becomes an issue. You're not told that you have to track down 6 blue souls before you can end the level, and you're told to get to an elevator with 0 hints about where said elevator is.
We pathetic fools, I've come for your souls.
Tang opens the spirit portal and this giant ghost monster thing comes out.
We pathetic fools, I've come for your souls.
This boss is stupid easy. He slowly lumbers around the room, he barely attacks you, and after about 5 straight minutes savaging it with fire, it finally died. I think you're supposed to grab the green souls to keep it from constantly healing. Maybe if the bosses had health bars like a normal damn game, I would know how it works. For no readily apparent reason, the ghost assassin dude grabs the artifact and heads to the spirit world, and Drake follows. You spend the next couple of oh sweet merciful crap! I got punched through the level boundary and killed in 1 hit! Yeah, there are several levels in the Xbox version where Drake spawns looking at the player. This quirk is kept in the PC version, and it results in multiple levels starting with both Drake and the camera facing a wall away from the actual level. The game even does this for the final boss. Nobody put any thought into how the PC port should work. It's just a rushed, lazy hack job of the Xbox version, which was a rushed, lazy hack job to begin with. Levels 21 through 23 are pretty simple platforming bits. It plays fine in the PC version since it's easy to point the camera where you want, and the game, shockingly, is nice enough to respawn you where you fell if you miss a jump. How come Spirit World almost always translates to random bits of crap floating in empty space in video games? You fight Ghost Assassin, and the guy's a cakewalk. He sits in place, he barely attacks you, and most of the time his attacks don't hurt you even if they land. Oh, Pookie, is the game refusing to register your attacks and cheating you out of landing hits? Now you know how it feels, you shitbag! You grab the artifact, figure out that you have to equip it as a weapon, and then use it to jump infinitely, grabbing hunks of the Master's soul. Because sure, the artifact does that now. Finally, up to the final boss. Drake falls through a hole in the floor and meets a 3-headed snake thing that comes out of nowhere. Apparently, this is the Spirit Lord that Drake mentioned once, way back in level 18. I guess a single offhanded mention is all the build-up and establishment that we need for the final boss. We don't know what it is, what it does, or why we have to kill it. We just know that killing it makes this game end.
You dare to enter uninvited! Who are you? I'm Drake, the Undying Dragon.
Yeah, you need a new nickname, Drake. Undying is a bit of an embellishment. You kill the boss by shooting the bones covering a portal on the far side of the room, but the boss's attacks are fast, cover vast swaths of the level at a time, and can easily ragdoll and stunlock you and kill you in a few hits. Plus, in the PC version, landing hits on the portal means pointing the camera away from the boss so you can't see its attacks and dodge them. Also, thanks to the idiotic spawn facing the wall crap, you start this fight facing away from the boss and have to awkwardly turn around, start running, and switch weapons with clunky controls as soon as the fight starts, and hope that you can do it all before the boss kills you. I tried switching weapons while slowing time to get around this problem, and I ended up having nothing equipped in one hand. Pretty sure that's not supposed to be possible. Remember your training. Do not dodge and struggle. Let the current of life sweep you as intended. Focus aggressively on your target that you may achieve what you set forth, and trust the walkthrough, for sometimes the wisest move is to seek the wisdom of others. So, don't ask me how, but someone figured out that if you just stand right next to the portal, the boss will ignore you, or at least attack you less often so you can end the fight quickly. Maybe the boss's attacks can also damage the portal and it ignores you to avoid damaging itself, I don't know. If you want to get the game yourself and try to beat this broken-ass boss legitimately, be my guest, but I'm done with this shit. You kill the boss, which accomplishes things, I guess, and Drake revives the Master and is congratulated on a job well done.
You've shown skill and presence on a level even I was unable to reach. Our honor is restored. You have proven yourself to our gods.
How is it possible that the Master has an even worse voice actor than Drake? I don't know, it just feels like this ending is missing something. What was it? Oh yeah, the writers completely forgot about the main villain. Tang completely drops out of the main story when you head to the spirit realm. You never fight him, you never bring him to justice. It's never really established that you've stopped his plan. The game just peters out and ends with our main threat still at large, figuring we saved that guy we know nothing about will do as an ending.
So I guess this is the end?
Hardly. It has just begun.
No, it's the end. Definitely the end. Because your game sucks all of the ass and the cartoon and comic book series never happened. The tragic thing about Drake of the 99 Dragons is that you can see how the game might have turned out good. Unlike a lot of other games I've covered, it did have potential. The combat has a good variety of enemies, you have a good variety of techniques and weapons, and there is a good variety to the stages, switching it up between combat, big fixed shootouts, and platforming. But the game was just too damn rushed, and the dev team didn't have time to get the game working properly. The combat is terribly balanced, swamping the player with overpowered enemies and few means of surviving. Both versions' combat systems are so broken you can barely even damage enemies. Almost every unique mechanic the game has is so poorly implemented that it's useless. And the final nail in the coffin is how severely underwritten the story is, with bland characters you don't know a thing about, doing cliched things to fight over plot points you also don't know a thing about. And Drake himself is a terrible protagonist, a dumb block of muscle with brooding gruffness and 90s cliches in place of personality or a character arc. This game is a perfect example of how rushing a product to market can completely tank a good idea. This could have been something special. Instead, it fully earns its ranking among the worst games ever made. So Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Happy Kwanzaa, Happy whatever the hell's holiday you celebrate. Happy holidays, and please God, a Happy New Year.